Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Medical Talk. This episode is something that I've been waiting for a very long time, and I don't think this person needs an introduction, and this product needs an introduction because Sketchy Medical has literally changed the way that we study. And Sketchy is the only reason that I actually remember which bacteria is catalase positive, which bacteria is oxidase positive or oxidase negative. I could have never understood it without Sketchy Medical. I'm so honored to have Dr. Saud Siddiqui here today with us, who is the co-founder for Sketchy. A very fun fact about Dr. Siddiqui is that I used to watch Sketchy videos back in my third year of med school, and I searched up that who is the founder of this product, and I found out that Dr. Saud Siddiqui, who is of Pakistani origin, is the founder. And I went back to school. Then I told my friends that, do you know that this founder of Sketchy is actually of Pakistani origin? That's so cool. I couldn't have imagined that one day I'll be talking to him on this podcast, but thank you so much, Dr. Siddiqui, for coming here and taking out the time for us. And I'm very honored to have you here. And I'm sure that this episode will be really interesting for the audience as well.
Awesome. Thank you for having me here. Excited to talk.
Sketchy has literally changed the way that we study medicine, and especially certain subjects that cannot be done without Sketchy at all. I mean, I don't even understand how people did microbiology and infectious disease, all of these names, bacteria, viruses, all of these things without Sketchy back in the day. I can't even imagine doing it without it. But obviously, when you guys started it and when you came up with the idea, there was no such thing. So, what was that journey like? When did it start? Where did it start? And how did it start?
Sure. So this started when we were in medical school, and as you mentioned, it was quite hard to get through classes like micro. So we were second year students at UC Irvine, here in Southern California, where I am currently. And look, for me, med school, especially in the beginning, was pretty difficult. It was like a difficult adjustment coming from, undergrad. There's just so much to learn, not enough time. Um, and I think in the beginning, you kind of spend a lot of time figuring out how you study, right? Some people go to class, some people don't, write your notes, type do questions, flashcards, the textbook, whatever. Like you're kind of figuring it out. And so when we were in micro, um, we were still kind of figuring it out, right? And we kind of stumbled upon this way of learning, where we started to use imagery, characters, symbols, sort of what you see today, characters around these microbes, to help remember them. And really it was kind of a last ditch effort. So like we had an exam the next day. It was like the middle of the night, and we were like, a few too many coffees deep, and we just started doing this, really. And the next day on the test, shockingly, it was actually the only thing we remembered. And so this started out really on pieces of paper, and whiteboards. And it's something that we continue to do, something that we kind of would bring our friends in on and kind of show them these images that we were drawing. This was Andrew Berg, who couldn't make it today. He's traveling, but he was a friend of mine and also just kind of the same study group. So we were kind of doing this together. So that's like initially where it started. And I could actually, for this podcast, I could probably send you like some of those pictures. I actually have some, so you can like put it in here so people can
I can
see
attach them
what it
here.
looked like. Yeah, they were like stick figures. So that was like the very beginning of where this started. Look, I was already using other resources. So we were doing like pathology at the time, and I was like using Pathoma, for example.
Yeah.
Online tool, content. And I kind of growing up, kind of dabbled in just like uh, entrepreneurial ideas of like creating content and creating websites and doing things like that. So I was using some of these tools, and I thought, hey, I could do that too. And we kind of came up with this interesting idea. Why don't we put together some of this content digitally and just like put it out in the world and just see what happens. So one day we just got this idea, and we went down a rabbit hole, and like we came up with the name the same day and like drew the logo. It was initially just called Sketchy Micro. And we drew the first sketch, which was Galactic Baby, which you might know.
Oh, yeah.
That was like the first one, and it was horrible.
But it's one of my
Because
favorite sketches actually because it's really cool. Like the space theme.
oh yeah, no, the current sketch is good. I'm saying the one we did that
Oh,
day was
oh yeah.
um and so like we weren't artists, so like we couldn't really draw. So we met our third co-founder, Brian Lemieux. He was also a classmate of ours. And one day we were all supposed to be studying at a coffee shop, and he was just drawing something on his computer, literally just board, and like it was like this very detailed picture of I think an elephant, and we were like, dude, we got to tell you about this idea we have. And then he was actually studying a bit like that too. And so the three of us got together, and I think the three of our different skills kind of meshed together to actually create content that was really good. So we created Salmonella, which was actual first sketch, like the first video,
Yeah.
and we put it on YouTube. It's still on YouTube, the same video, so you can go and look at it. The same one we put up that day, and we made just like a website, a landing page, a little bit of branding, and just like an email list of like, hey, if you're interested, just put your email in here, and that's it. That's where it started, and that's kind of where everything took off. Like that one video started gaining views, comments. People are going to the website, putting the emails in, sending us this. It was getting into like Reddit and Facebook. So it was like at that point we realized like, oh, there's something here. But we really didn't have like a plan or really anything. We were just kind of figuring it out. So that's like the inception of the idea was like us solving our own problem. And then the actual like putting it out there was kind of just this thing of like we were students, we found it helpful, we thought it'd be helpful to others, and so we put it out there just to see what would happen. And really, so yeah, that was the very beginning, and obviously the story keeps going, but I could pause there because I've been going for a while here.
That's really interesting because mostly whenever there's a startup, you're actually trying to solve a problem that you have and then it blows up because like most of the people are having the same problem. Did you expect that it's going to blow up so much? And the response that you got on that one video, was it something that motivated you to go on with it?
We didn't know what the reception would be. We were actually working on like two other videos already. So it was Salmonella, Klebsiella, and Proteus. Those
Yeah.
three are on YouTube. They all look kind of similar. You can probably tell if you look at them again. So that was our like, let's put out three and kind of see. Um, but no, like we didn't know what the reception. We weren't like expecting what happened. Um, and honestly, it was a little bit tricky because look, like you mentioned, we got the idea because we were students. So
Yeah.
we were experiencing a problem that was very specific that
Yeah.
we understood really well. And it's the only reason we were able to like do this, right? And actually like do it well. You couldn't be just some random person and like come up with this. I think you really have to be in it. It's just something that I think people should recognize that whatever you're doing, whatever your domain expertise is, if you're if you're interested in starting something, an idea, startup, any problem you're trying to solve, it's probably going to be in that domain because you know it so well, you're living it, you know the problems. So one, that was important. And then the other side of students, um, you know, it was a little bit daunting on like, okay, can we actually do this at the same time? How is that going to work? We're busy with class. And so, I mean, you know how med school is. So there was a little bit of that figuring out if it was even possible. But yeah, I'd say the response was what kind of helped us decide to keep going with it.
Even when we started watching Sketchy, I started watching it last year because that's when we started our infectious disease module. And honestly, after watching Sketchy, I don't think I can look at like certain things because some symbols are very recurring. For example, a cat. I can never look at a cat the same way again because whenever I look at a cat, it's just clicks in my mind. Like somehow I think about Catalyst positive. It's very weird, and if you tell someone, they're probably going to think that there's something wrong with this person. But it's because you're watching it so much, and then you're constantly looking at those images. There have been instances where my parents have come in the room or my sisters have come in the room, and they've been like, "Why are you watching a cartoon?" And then I have to explain it to them that it's not a cartoon. It's actually a video on a bacteria. So it's very interesting the way this began, but I'm sure that must have been very difficult handling it with med school, because even like right now we're in med school and this gets crazy, gets very difficult. How did you manage that, and what were some of the challenges you faced at that time?
Yeah, so it was pretty challenging. One, I mean, we paced ourselves. I mean, we were just realistic on like how long it would take us to build this. So, um, I mean, like we didn't really have like a big plan. So we decided we were gonna like turn this into something. So we like put in a little bit of like our student loan money, right? Like it was just like this is all I have left, and like hopefully this works. And if not, I guess I'll take out more loans. And started creating content. Um, and I was doing also like the just like the technical side of it just to make it work. Um, and so in the beginning, the founders do everything,
Yeah.
right? And that's just the way it is. And we were doing that, and that's good because one, you should be spending your time on the actual solution and like how it's going to work, so on, because um, you need it to be really good. So it's just you have to be that person. You can't just like outsource that, especially in the beginning. Um, and two, like people knew who we were. Like we weren't hiding that we were students and like that we were the founders. And but it was kind of helping us build a bond with the students and kind of learn more about what they were looking for. Um, and we just would build content when we had time. The nice thing was it was like we were also studying at the same time as we were like creating this. So that was helpful. But it took a long time. People were asking us like, "Hey, when are you releasing this?" And we were just like, "Hey, sorry, it just we're in school." At some point you start finding help, right? But this was after like we had launched, so we didn't have any capital to like hire people. So um, there was actually a point where we just like ran out of money. We were getting people like we were hiring like artists to help us draw just because we needed to do a lot and do some video. And we just like ran out of money. We're like, what do we do now? So we told our students we have this much content. Um, we're doing a pre-order and we'll just open it up to you, give you more content. So that was when we had our like first sales. Um, and that funded us basically like finish the content. And then as we started getting that kind of revenue, then we could get more help for people to kind of, so it's kind of like you have to think about maybe someone else can do, you start like bringing other people
Yeah.
in to do that to kind of free up your, but it was hard. Like, I'd get off like a night shift in a rotation and like get a call from Randy like, "Hey, the website's down." I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm the only one not to go do this before I sleep." So just there are days like that, like I remember one launch we were up for like 2, 3 days straight, just like trying to get everything ready. So a lot of stories like that where you believe in it and you just kind of you keep going, and over time, as you get more help, it gets a little bit easier.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts by founders and business owners and entrepreneurs, and most of them, they have said this, and you said the same thing, that in the beginning you have to do everything, and it actually pays off, because when you hire more people and when you build a team, if you know how to do everything, it improves your work as well, and it's easier because you know how to do everything. So I think that was the same in your case as well, that you guys were doing everything on your own, despite it being, I'm sure, very difficult because of your schedules and being a med student, and it's probably like very hard to build a company while doing that.
So I ended up just like moving one of my rotations. I had a third year rotation. It was like 6 weeks. I like moved it to the end of the year where I had like a little gap. So that gave me like, I mean, 6 weeks, not that much time, but like 6 weeks of dedicated like time on the company. So that was good. A lot of people thought we were just like crazy and they're like, what are you doing? Why are you spending so much time on this? But it was just something that we believed with and kept working on.
That's amazing, honestly. That's very inspiring because a lot of people have ideas in med school, but they just don't get the time to do it, or maybe they're afraid of starting something. This entire period, while you were making videos, because there are so many videos, there's a video on every single bacteria, every single virus, fungus, everything. Did you ever face a problem in creating a story? Because what I've noticed while studying is that the stories are very different because, and for obvious reasons, because you don't want to mix them up when you're doing a question on UWorld, for example, or if you get a question on your STEP exam. Did you guys get stuck on any story and like you couldn't figure out what sketch to go with? How did you guys overcome that?
It was a little bit easier because it was like a blank slate.
Yeah.
Honestly, some of these microbes have like these interesting names, so it just like made it easier. You're like,
Yeah.
Pseudomonas, oh, the Mona Lisa, and you just like run with it. The recurring symbols. So that would help too if we knew like certain symbols would have to be there. But a lot in the beginning were just based on it. Like Campylobacter is like a camp,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Helicobacter has a helicopter. It was like, and it's funny because that's just how micro is. Just they have these interesting names. But kind of as we moved on, some things that we did were we would create like themes. So like maybe a chapter had a theme. You probably saw this more in like farm. So that would help us kind of just like tie it together. And also just kind of like batch it. So like when you are thinking about a certain type of drug, you could go back and think about like that theme and then the
Mm.
actual scene, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like some of how we did it. It's like there is a lot of information, right? And there's like a lot of, I mean, I think we have like 900
Mm.
sketches now. So we used kind of the recurring symbols, we used the themes, and that helped us. And then, in the beginning, we would just like me, Andrew, Brian, Brian's brother joined us too, Aaron.
Mm.
We would just, sit together and come up with these ideas and like write them down. Sometimes, this may be a little bit of a tangent, but I think sometimes something that I've found is when you're working on like a difficult problem or like you're trying to figure out something, um, what I find is helpful is like actually dedicating some time to do some like dedicated work on trying to figure out, and you might not actually, and that's okay because you've done a lot of the work. And actually, when you're doing other things, sometimes the answer just kind of comes to you. It's kind of like that shower thought idea. Like I really do believe in that, and it's something that happened to us a lot as we were doing this, where you like spend a lot of time on it, maybe like a couple days later, just like suddenly you
Mm.
have it. So that's just a side, but something that I think is like a real phenomenon.
When you launched Sketchy, almost everyone started using it. What was that like? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people probably just came up to you in your own med school and thanked you for creating such a platform. What was that like? What was that feeling like that you've created something that's helping so many people across the world, not only in the US?
Um, I think I mean, I'm still like kind of wrapping my head around it, honestly. Um, because again, in the beginning, we did not have the idea that this is
Yeah.
what it would become, and really it's just, it's just something that, it's at the end of the day, getting that reaction from like a student, just like it gives you that, it's just like a level of satisfaction of like, actually like was able to help someone out. So that's like a really good feeling because you just kind of remember all the times where you could have just stopped, And I
Yeah.
think if you read about any new business like story, like or biography of founders or whatever, like you will see this theme over and over again
Yeah.
of like there's always a point in time where this thing just could have not existed,
Yeah.
always. And we definitely, have those moments where like if you stop and that's it, right? It's like you're the ones pushing forward. So being able to like look back and be like, we're glad we kept going. We're glad we did that because we made this impact. The first few years, like we were in school still, and it was just like nobody around us knew what it was, and like even in residency, it was like my co-residents didn't really know what it was because it like came after them. But
Yeah.
then after that, like starting to go to like conferences or like meeting med students in the hospital and stuff, uh, it was just like an interesting experience because I like never experienced anything like that, where people like are thanking you for something you do. You like never met them.
Yeah.
So it's a good feeling and just something that, I'm grateful for.
I'm sure, like being a student, thank you so much for not quitting and not stopping it, because it has really, really helped us. Like, even around me, a lot of my friends are taking the step one right now. And I was talking to a friend, and she was telling me that, her scores on the NBMEs were dropping, and she wasn't sure about what to do to improve them. And then she watched all of Sketchy again, and she saw a drastic increase in her score, because obviously, the consolidation of the information and how it really puts everything in your mind. And even during my exam, there were questions on microbiology. There were a lot of questions on my exam. And I still remember hearing Dr. Andrew's voice and thinking about those pictures. So it really does help. And it's awesome, honestly, because it has helped everyone around me. I don't know a single person who doesn't like Sketchy, honestly, and especially for micro. I don't think micro can be done without it.
Early on, the courses we really focused on were kind of those second year
Yeah.
courses, so like micro farm path at the time. We were like subject based, not system. So that was the initial focus, and part of it was just because we were doing those classes. They were pretty big for step one, right? Um, and they were like pretty tough classes. So we started there. Over time, um, we started to think about where else this might be able to be applied. Um, and we tried different things. We tried some clinical initially. The tricky thing with clinical is there was just so much more information that, some of the videos in the beginning were like they're getting really long.
Yeah.
More recently, we've actually we've released new clinical content where some of it is like video, some of it's non-video actually, which is a symbol. So um, I think what we learned from that is, each stage in med school is going to have like a different solution,
Yeah.
right? And like a different approach. So we learned that content as well. So like biochemistry, anatomy, immunology, were also like areas that we added. And it's something, I mean, partly, what people were asking for on like, hey, this was a difficult course. Can you create a sketchy? And the other thing we try to do is stick to things that it would work well for. Immunology is like very like memory based, right? So that like fits pretty well, and I think it's pretty popular now. We decided to stick to really like medical. So like we tried things with law, but we're not really doing that right now. We did some pre-med, so MCAT actually.
Yeah.
And that was more recent. That was like 2020-ish time, so like pretty recent. Um, and then now we're looking more into clinical learning, so like clinical readiness, third year, fourth year, beyond that with the new product, which is more like case-based learning. DDX by Sketchy is kind of what I've been working on. What it is a case-based learning tool that is powered by AI. So, and kind of where this came from. So when I was a student, I like in my rotations, like I wished I could actually like go through cases and practice and like learn all the questions that I ask, understand like based on the information I had, like what is the diagnosis, what's the management, for both for the rotation, but also for like shelf and step two. Do that. Like you could use a textbook and
Yeah.
or like read cases, or you could do Sim Center, but like I couldn't just walk into Sim Center and do it. There's like no interactive way to do this
Yeah.
until kind of AI being more like readily accessible to like build on. So what we've done is basically created these clinical cases. So students are able to take a history from an interactive patient that's being powered by AI. We have live feedback scoring based on the answers you're eliciting, the information that you're finding out. And you go through a whole case. So there's an attending that asks your differential is, what orders you want to put in, there's results. Something we're really excited about. It's funny, this idea came up again through solving my own problem. I was thinking oral boards because it got delayed because of COVID, put all the cases and did them this way. And
Yeah.
then we basically came up with this idea where we could use it more for like med student learning. So not quite like oral boards level, but at the med student level. So that's where this started. So we're planning to release this November. Initially starting more with actually with schools. So we've partnered with many schools here in the US. Um, and they have been piloting the program with us.
Yeah.
So initially we're seeing like through the schools to the students. But we think we'll probably open it up on the student side as well, assuming like people want it. But right now, so far, the feedback's been pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also really excited for it. It's something that's very exciting. Interface is really interactive. It's very interesting. And I think that this is going to be very helpful because after your step one, step two is more clinical about the next step in management.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it is kind of like sketchy in a way, depending on what case you've done, how you did it, might give you contents. But just like how you probably today go back to those memory palaces where like the microbe was,
Hmm.
like Pseudomonas, oh yeah, I'm going back to that bathtub and you're there, right? I think the same way with like when you see patients, right? There's like certain conditions that seen maybe for the first time or like in
Hmm.
an interesting way where whenever you think of that condition again, you kind of go back to that case or
Hmm.
like that experience.
Yeah.
So I'd say in a way, we are building kind of another space in your mind for these different diseases. And instead of just a sketch, it's actually like a full case that you did, and you can think about like, what did I learn? How did I manage that person the next time you see it? So yeah, really.
Exciting things are coming up for Sketchy. I think it's going to be great. Apart from that, I feel like a lot of people after watching this podcast, because we have a lot of Pakistani audience, and we know that you have a Pakistani origin and you are linked to Pakistan. So, do you plan on coming to Pakistan anytime soon?
I probably should. It's been a long time. So I get some background. So my parents are from Peshawar, both from
Yeah.
Peshawar, Pakistan. They migrated here
Mhm.
as like adults.
Yeah.
So I was born here. Last time I was back was it's it's been a long time, probably 20 years. So I'm due for a visit,
Yeah.
so I can make it out there. And I you know, my parents taught me well, so मैं उर्दू में भी बात कर सकता हूँ, तो
Oh, that's really
I'll be
nice.
good there. I'll be good. So
Yeah.
my wife's also uh she's Pakistani by background, so we got to bring the kids out there. They don't know Urdu yet, so we got to teach them. So that'll be a good way to immerse them. But yeah, hopefully soon. It's been a while.
It's like you have a lot of fans here in Pakistan. Like Sketchy is very famous in med schools in Pakistan. You'll have a great time here, I'm sure. The last question I wanted to ask you is for us medical students. Do you have any advice for us? You have a very inspiring journey. You've done medicine, you've done your residency, you're doing everything. You have a business and you have a very successful career. Is there any advice that you would like to give to med students who are in their third or fourth year of med school?
I mean, I'd say a couple of things. So one, just in terms of this in your medical career, in terms of like which this is probably like cliche advice, but really with anything, it's gonna be like do what you really enjoy and because you're gonna be good at that,
Hmm.
right? And if you're good at it, then you're gonna have like a fulfilling kind of career ahead of you. You don't want to end up somewhere doing something you just hate or like don't want to do because you're just not gonna be good at it because you hate it. Thinking about like specialty and like practice type and all that, just I'd say expose yourself as much to like the possibilities and variety as you discover that. And I know it's hard because you kind of have to like decide early and like make yourself competitive and like so on. So yeah, I think keep an open mind, explore, see what you like. Um and look, what you like may be similar to what I liked, which was like startups and like entrepreneurship and like in that path. And look, if that interests you, you know it already. Like you don't need me to tell you. We get this itch to like create things and do things, and like if that's you, lean into that. And I think again, like we said earlier in this podcast, what your have a skill that is, valuable. So like you're a physician, you may be an expert in a certain area, you will know the problems, you will know the domain well. And that right idea will come to you. It's kind of hard to force it. It's gonna, but you should always kind of have that hat on, kind of that entrepreneur hat of like, what are the problems? Is there a better way to do this? So I'd say lean into it. And there's no perfect time. If you want to do something, there's never a perfect time. And so I wouldn't get too caught up on like the future and like what it looks like. And you just start doing it, honestly. You just start doing it and you figure it out and you just, you know, do that every day and you end up somewhere. So that's, hopefully useful for some people out there. And kind of what I've learned on this journey.
That's great advice. And thank you so much. And I mean, I never imagined that I will be talking to the co-founder of Sketchy, because you're just watching Sketchy as a medical student. This is a very big honor for me. And thank you so much for coming here and talking to us and talking to your Pakistani audience. And I'm sure that they'll enjoy this episode a lot. You always want to know the person who's behind something that you're using so much and like so much. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you. And to all the listeners, Pakistan's in the bad.